Section 11, Letters 51 to 55. Letter the 51st. The Marquise de Merteuil to the Vicomte de Valmont.
Really, Vicomte, you are insupportable. You treat me as lightly as though I were your mistress. Do you know that I shall get angry, and that at the present moment I am in a fearful temper? Why, you have to see Danceny tomorrow morning. You know how important it is that I should speak to you before that interview, and without troubling yourself any more about it, you keep me waiting all day to run off I know not where. You are the cause of my arriving at Madame de Volanges indecently late, and of my being found surprising by all the old women. I was obliged to flatter them during the whole of the evening in order to appease them, for one must never annoy the old women. It is they who make the young ones' reputations. It is now 1 o'clock in the morning, and instead of going to bed, which I am dying to do, I must needs write you a long letter which will make me twice as sleepy from the ennui it causes me. You are most fortunate that I have not time to scold you further. Do not believe for that reason that I forgive you. It is only that I am pressed for time. Listen to me, then. I hasten to come to the point. However little skill you may exert, you are bound tomorrow to have Danceny's confidence. The moment is favourable for confidence. It is the moment of unhappiness. The little girl has been to confession. Like a child, she has told everything, and ever since she has been tormented to such a degree by the fear of the devil that she insists on breaking it off. She related to me all her little scruples with a vivacity which told me how excited she was. She showed me her letter announcing the rupture, which was a real sermon. She babbled for an hour to me, without uttering one word of common sense. But she embarrassed me none the less, for you can imagine that I could not risk opening my mind to such a wrong-headed creature. I saw, however, through all this verbiage, that she is as fond of her Danceny as ever. I even remarked one of those resources which love never fails to find, and of which the little girl is an amusing dupe. Tormented by her desire to occupy herself with her lover, and by the fear of being damned if she does so, she has invented the plan of praying God that she may be able to forget him, and as she repeats this prayer at every moment of the day, she finds a means thereby of thinking of him unceasingly. With any more experience than Danceny, this little incident would perhaps be more favourable than the reverse, but the young man is so much of a céladon that, if we do not help him, he will require so much time to overcome the slightest obstacles that there will be none left for us to carry out our project. You are quite right. It is a pity, and I am as vexed as you, that he should be the hero of this adventure. But what would you have? What is done, and it is your fault. I asked to see his reply. It was really pitiful.
Note: this letter has not been recovered.
He produces arguments till he is out of breath to prove to her that an involuntary sentiment cannot be a crime, as if it did not cease to be involuntary once one ceases to fight against it. That idea is so simple that it even suggested itself to the little girl. He complains of his unhappiness in a manner that is touching enough, but his grief is so gentle, and seems so strong and so sincere, that it seems to me impossible that a woman who finds occasion to reduce a man to such a degree of despair, and with so little danger, is not tempted to get rid of her fancy. Finally he explains that he is not a monk, as the little one believed, and that is, without contradiction, the best thing he has done, for if it is a question of going so far as to abandon yourself to monastic loves, it is assuredly not the Knights of Malta who would deserve the preference. Be that as it may, instead of wasting time in arguments which would have compromised me, perhaps without convincing, I approved her project of rupture. But I said that it was nicer, in such a case, to tell your reasons rather than to write them, that it was customary also to return letters and any other trifles one might have received, and appearing thus to enter into the views of the little person, I persuaded her to grant an interview to Danceny. We formed our plans on the spot, and I charged myself with the task of persuading the mother to go abroad without her daughter. It is to-morrow afternoon that this decisive moment will take place. Danceny is already informed of it, but for God's sake, if you get an opportunity, please persuade this pretty swain to be less languorous, and teach him, since he must be told everything, that the true fashion to overcome scruples is to leave nothing to be lost by those who possess them. For the rest, in order to save a repetition of this ridiculous scene, I did not fail to excite certain doubts in the little girl's mind as to the discretion of confessors, and I assure you she is paying now for the fright which she gave me, by her terror lest hers should go and tell everything to her mother. I hope that, after I have talked once or twice more with her, she will give up going thus to tell her follies to the first comer.
Note: the reader must have guessed already, by the conduct of Madame de Merteuil, how little respect she had for religion. This passage would have been suppressed, only it was thought that, whilst showing results, one ought not to neglect to make the causes known.
Adieu, Vicomte. Take charge of Danceny and guide his way. It would be shameful if we could not do what we will with 2 children. If we find it more difficult than we had thought at first, let us reflect to animate our zeal. You, that it is the daughter of Madame de Volanges who is in question. I, that she is destined to become the wife of Gercourt. Adieu. Paris, 15th of September, 17.
Letter the 52nd. The Vicomte de Valmont to the Présidente de Tourvel.
You forbid me, madame, to speak to you of my love. But where am I to find the necessary courage to obey you? Solely occupied by a sentiment which should be so sweet, and which you render so cruel, languishing in the exile to which you have condemned me, living only on privations and regrets, in prey to torments all the more dolorous in that they remind me unceasingly of your indifference, must I lose the only consolation which remains to me? And can I have any other, save that of sometimes laying bare to you a soul which you fill with trouble and bitterness? Will you avert your gaze, that you may not see the tears you cause to flow? Will you refuse even the homage of the sacrifices you demand? Would it not be worthier of you, of your good and gentle soul, to pity an unhappy one who is only rendered so by you, rather than to seek to aggravate his pain by a refusal which is at once unjust and rigorous? You pretend to be afraid of love, and you will not see that you alone are the cause of the evils with which you reproach it. Oh, no doubt the sentiment is painful when the object which inspires it does not reciprocate. But where is happiness to be found if mutual love does not procure it? Tender friendship, sweet confidence, the only one which is without reserve, sorrow's alleviation, pleasure's augmentation, hope's enchantment, the delights of remembrance, where find them else than in love? You calumniate it, you, who, in order to enjoy all the good which it offers you, have but to give up resisting it. and I forget the pain which I experience in undertaking its defence. You force me also to defend myself, for whereas I consecrate my life to your adoration, you pass yours in seeking reason to blame me. Already you have assumed that I am frivolous and a deceiver, and taking advantage of certain errors which I myself have confessed to you, you are pleased to confound the man I was then with what I am at present. Not content with abandoning me to the torment of living away from you, you add to that a cruel banter as to pleasures to which you know how you have rendered me insensible. You do not believe either in my promises or my oaths. Well, there remains one guarantee for me to offer you, which you will not suspect. It is yourself. I only ask you to question yourself in all good faith. If you do not believe in my love, if you doubt for a moment that you reign supreme in my heart, if you are not sure that you have fixed this heart, which indeed has thus far been too fickle, I consent to bear the penalty of this error. I shall suffer, but I will not appeal. But if, on the contrary, doing justice to us both, you are forced to admit to yourself that you have not, will never have, a rival, ask me no more, I beg you, to fight with chimeras, and leave me at least the consolation of seeing you no longer in doubt as to a sentiment which indeed will not finish, cannot finish, but with my life. Permit me, madame, to beg you to reply positively to this part of my letter. If, however, I give up that period of my life which seems to damage me so severely in your eyes, it is not because, in case of need, reasons had failed me to defend it. What have I done, after all, but fail to resist the vortex into which I was thrown? Entering the world young and without experience, passed, so to speak, from hand to hand by a crowd of women, who all hasten to forestall, by their good nature, a reflection which they feel cannot but be unfavourable to them. Was it my part then to set the example of a resistance which was never opposed to me? Or was I to punish myself for a moment of error, which was often provoked, by a constancy undoubtedly useless, and which would only have excited ridicule? Nay, what other cause, save a speedy rupture, can justify a shameful choice? But I can say it, this intoxication of the senses, perhaps even this delirium of vanity, did not attain to my heart. Born for love, intrigue might distract it, but did not suffice to occupy it. Surrounded by seducing but despicable objects, none of them reached as far as my soul. I was offered pleasures, I sought for virtues, and in short, I even thought myself inconstant, because I was delicate and sensitive. It was when I saw you that I saw light. Soon I understood that the charm of love sprang from the qualities of the soul, that they alone could cause its excess and justify it. I felt, in short, that it was equally impossible for me not to love you, or to love any other than you. There, madame, is the heart to which you fear to trust yourself, and on whose fate you have to pronounce. But whatever may be the destiny you reserve for it, you will change nothing of the sentiments which attach it to you. They are as inalterable as the virtues which have given them birth. Paris, 3rd September, 17.
Letter the 53rd. The Vicomte de Valmont to the Marquise de Merteuil.
I have seen Danceny, but only obtained his half confidence. He insists especially on suppressing the name of the little Volanges, of whom he only spoke to me as a woman of great virtue, even somewhat a devote. Apart from that, he gave me a fairly veracious account of his adventure, particularly the last incident. I excited him as best I could. I bantered him greatly upon his delicacy and scruples, but it seems that he clings to them, and I cannot answer for him. For the rest, I shall be able to tell you more after to-morrow. I am taking him to-morrow to Versailles, and I will occupy myself by studying him on the road. The interview which is to take place to-day also gives me some hope. Everything may have happened to our satisfaction, and perhaps there is nothing left for us at present but to obtain a confession and collect the proofs. This task will be easier for you than for me, for the little person is more confiding, or what comes to the same thing, more talkative than her discreet lover. However, I will do my utmost. Adieu, my lovely friend. I am in a mighty hurry. I shall not see you this evening, nor to-morrow. If you on your side know anything, write me a word on my return. I shall certainly come back to sleep in Paris. At 3rd September, in the evening.
Letter the 54th. The Marquise de Merteuil to the Vicomte de Valmont.
Oh, yes, it is certainly with Danceny that there is something to discover. If he told you so, he was boasting. I know nobody so stupid in an affair of love, and I reproach myself more and more with the kindness we have shown him. Do you know that yesterday I thought I was compromised through him, and it would have been a pure loss. Oh, I will have my revenge, I promise you. When I arrived yesterday to fetch Madame de Volanges, she no longer wanted to go out. She felt indisposed, and I had need of all my eloquence to persuade her, and I foresaw that Danceny might arrive before our departure, which would have been all the more awkward as Madame de Volanges had told him the day before that she would not be at home. Her daughter and I were on thorns. At last we went out, and the little one pressed my hand so affectionately as she bid me adieu that, in spite of her intended rupture, with which she believed herself, in all good faith, still to be occupied, I prophesied wonders in the course of the evening. I was not at the end of my anxieties. We had hardly been half an hour at when Madame de Volanges felt really unwell, and naturally she wanted to return home. As for me, I was the less inclined for it in that I was afraid, supposing we were to surprise the young people, as the chances were we should, that my efforts to make the mother go abroad might seem highly suspicious. I adopted a course of frightening her upon her health, which luckily is not difficult, and I kept her for an hour and a half, without consenting to drive her home, by feigning fear at the consequences of the dangerous motion of the carriage. We did not return until the hour that had been fixed. From the shamefaced air which I remarked on our arrival, I confess I hoped that at least my trouble had not been wasted. The desire I had for further information made me stay with Madame de Volanges, who went to bed at once, and after having supped at her bedside, we left her at an early hour, under the pretext that she had need of repose, and passed into her daughter's apartment. The letter had done, on her side, all that I had expected of her. Vanished scruples, fresh vows of eternal love, etc., etc. In a word, she had performed properly. But the fool Danceny had not by 1 point passed the line where he had been before. Oh, one can safely quarrel with such a one. Reconciliations are not dangerous. The child assures me, however, that he wanted more, but that she knew how to defend herself. I would wager that she brags, or that she excuses him. Indeed, I made almost certain of it. The fantasy seized me to find out how much one might rely on the defence of which she was capable, and I, a mere woman, bit by bit excited her to the point. In short, you may believe me, no one was ever more susceptible to a surprise of the senses. She is really lovable, this dear child. She deserves a different lover. She shall have at least a firm friend, for I am becoming really fond of her. I have promised her that I will form her, and I think I shall keep my word. I have often felt a need of having a woman in my confidence, and I should prefer her to another, but I can do nothing so long as she is not what she needs to be, and that is one reason the more for bearing a grudge against Danceny. Adieu, Vicomte. Do not come to me tomorrow, unless it be in the forenoon. I have yielded to the entreaties of the Chevalier for an evening at the Petite Maison. Paris, 4th of September, 17...
Letter the 55th. Cécile Volanges to Sophie Carnet.
You were right, my dear Sophie. Your prophecies succeed better than your advice. Danceny, as you had predicted, has been stronger than my confessor, than you, than myself, and here we are returned precisely to our old position. Ah, I do not repent it, and if you scold me, it will be only because you do not know the pleasure of loving Danceny. It is very easy to say what one ought to do. Nothing prevents you. But if you had any experience of how we suffer from the pain of somebody we love, of the way in which his pleasure becomes our own, of how difficult it is to say no when what we wish to say is yes, you would be astonished at nothing. I myself, who have felt it most keenly, do not yet understand it. Do you suppose, for instance, that I could see Danceny weep without weeping myself? I assure you that that would be utterly impossible to me, and, when he is happy, I am as happy as he. You may say what you like. What one says does not change things from what they are, and I am very certain that it is like that. I should like to see you in my place. No, it is not that I wish to say, for certainly I should not like to change places with anyone, but I wish that you too loved somebody, not only because then you would understand me better and scold me less, but also because you would be happier, or, I should rather say, you would only then begin to know happiness. Our amusements, our merriment, all that, you see, is only child's play. Nothing is left when once it is over. But love, ah, love, a word, a look, only to know that he is there, that is happiness. When I see Danceny, I ask for nothing more. When I cannot see him, I ask only for him. I do not know how this is, but it would seem as though everything which I like resembles him. When he is not with me, I dream of him. And when I can dream of him utterly, without distraction, when I am quite alone, for instance, I am still happy. I close my eyes, and suddenly I think I see him. I remember his conversation. It causes me to sigh, and then I feel a fire, an agitation. I cannot keep in one place. It is like a torment, and this torment gives me an unutterable pleasure. I even think that when once one has been in love, the effect of it is shed even over friendship. That which I bear for you has not changed, however. It is always as it was at the convent. But what I tell you of, I feel for Madame de Merteuil. It seems as though I love her more as I do Danceny than as yourself, and sometimes I wish that she were he. This is so perhaps because it is not a children's friendship like our own, or else because I see them so often together, which makes me deceive myself. Be that as it may, the truth is that, between the two of them, they make me very happy, and after all I do not think there is much harm in what I do. I would only ask to stay as I am, and it is only the idea of marriage which distresses me. For if Monsieur de Jaucourt is such a man as I am told, and I have no doubt of it, I do not know what will become of me. Adieu, my Sophie. I love you always most tenderly. Paris, 4th of September, 17